Tonight, let me hit OK on that then. Right. Okay, so I'm Jonathan Leader. I'm a board member of the Interfaith Partners of South Carolina for some time. I'm a member of the Jewish community. And safety and security is something that we've all been, I think, concerned about or probably should be concerned about. So we're going to cover that a little bit tonight and how we can advance ourselves and make hopefully a better future for ourselves. So this is actually from the poster that was passed out by Holly and IPSC. It's been 10 years since the Clemente Pinckney Hates Crime Act attempted to go through, and it hasn't gone through. And I want to be very clear that we're not going into anything that looks even remotely like politics tonight. The IPSC is a non-political entity. It is nonpartisan. It is neutral. It is a safe place, if I can use that term, for people of all faith traditions to come together and have meaningful discussions, some of which we'll agree with, some of which we will disagree with, but it's always done with dignity and respect. And that's exactly what's going to happen tonight. One of the points of not having a hate crime law is because there is no law. Things are inconsistently reported if they're reported at all. And the way that we move forward with funding, for instance, so you may be aware that there is a uh, support for security and safety funding for places of worship that's facing the legislature and is very likely to be passed. It's been very favorably dealt with both in the House and the Senate. So funding will become available after the next session. So that's important. But of course, if you want to keep the funding, it's important to have the data back up the need for the funding. So while most of us know what's going on in our communities, it might be useful to go beyond that. So IPSC, as is not atypical for IPSC, has actually kind of grabbed the bull by the horns, if I can use that metaphor, and is basically trying to put together a situation here using existing resources to make it easier for everybody to deal with what we need to deal with and move down the road and get things done. There will be a point at the end of this for questions, and I'm looking forward to them when we get there. Trust me, I love questions. Right. So as I said, no political tonight. This is a apolitical position. There will be no bones of contention. And as an archaeologist and a forensic one at that, I'm very happy with that. I prefer to have a day off. So no bones. We're good. Having said that, we should recognize that it's been some time and the anniversary for the Mother Emanuel 9 was just celebrated, the memorial. And we should keep in mind that while much of what we see in the news and the rest is elsewhere in the nation, we are not immune. We may be slightly behind on some of the trends, but the trends are there nonetheless. And all of us probably need to take that truly to heart. And for those of us who knew some of the individuals here from the Mother Emanuel 9, we're never going to forget them. So the FBI is tasked with reporting hate crimes. And while I could read this wonderful slide to you, I think we all know how to read, and I'll just let you do it for yourselves. But there's an important point, which is at the bottom, that there's actually a Hate Crime Statistics Act of 1990, which requires the FBI to actually take a look at hate crimes and to, canvass the nation, put together a database, track it, see how it changed from different quarters and from different years, and basically take a pulse on that type of a situation. And that's extraordinarily important. There is, unfortunately, a couple of problems with this, however. Here we see what the statistics could be used for and actually have been used for those of us who are involved with the national security, I'll get it right, the nonprofit security grant program, the NSGP. We look at risk assessments. We look at where things have happened and whether or not our community, whatever that community is being targeted. And based on that, we fill out forms, we ask for federal funds. And to their credit, Congress has made those funds available right along. This last time, it was pulled back for a period of time while they did their recalibration. Again, this is an apolitical event. We're not going to get into that. But theoretically, if not theoretically, hopefully, it has been released. I've been told that it has, and we're moving forward on it. And each year, there's been a little bit more money. and people should apply for it. If you haven't applied for it before, there are lots of people who will be happy to assist you on that, including SCM, which is a group we'll get to in a moment. Take a look at the red, however. While the federal government, specifically the FBI, is tasked, by law, putting together the data, the places where the data comes from is strictly voluntary. They are not required to parse out and determine what is or is not a hate crime. They are not required to pass that on to the federal government. And that's the way it's been since the very beginning. So whatever you see from the FBI statistics is always based on, best information at the time, recognizing that it is not all inclusive. And there is a point to that. So this is what I was just saying, right? So all crimes pretty much are reported. If you're in law enforcement, and once I retired here from the university, I was very lucky to get work with Don and Larry and Don I'll get it out for next with Dottie and everybody else with the unit. I washed my tongue before I came here after dinner. I can't do a thing with it, but we do get the crimes reported. However, simply because a crime is reported does not mean it's designated as a hate crime. And the FBI is required to pick up on hate crimes along with other crimes, but it'd be nice to know which ones are which. The other thing is, depending on the state statute, assuming your state has a statute on hate crimes, what defines a hate crime can be very different from state to state. And in point of fact, I would guarantee they are very different from state to state. Some include entire classes that are not mentioned in other hate crime laws. So that's a problem. They're not in agreement. What should be happening is what we're seeing in that nice little animated GIF at the bottom. All this information coming together and working flawlessly to move the wheels of justice and safety forward for the entire community. The reality is, as is often the case, somewhat less than that. And that's simply what it is. And we have to learn to deal with it and work with it. Now, this is a little bit out of date. Instead of 3 states not having a hate crime bill, there are only 2 states that do not have a hate crime bill, one of which being South Carolina, which is where we are. But also take a look at the different colors. So the dark blue is required data collection. It happens, whatever that law is defined as, and you are required to put together the data and pass it on. Make it available, transparency. In the light blue states, you are not required. Again, strictly voluntary. So again, even with the passage of hate crime legislation in all but 2 states, because of the way the hate crime legislation was, consented to by the people, the legislature in those states, they are different. So again, it has to take it with a certain amount of salt. So what's that really mean? Okay, based on the information we do have, which has been shared, this is what it looks like in terms of who gets targeted for hate crimes. Race, ethnicity, religion, all those figure in, and you can see how that works. Okay. Unsurprisingly, the vast majority of hate crimes are actually based on race and ethnicity. However, if you take a look at religion, religion is, as of 2022, is 17.3%. That's not small when you consider that's a national statement. So that's an important point. So what's it mean? Well, this is unfortunately from 2017, and again, because of the way the data is put together, you don't always get an informatic of the latest stuff. It takes time for people to decide what's going in and what it means, and then come up with these things. But if you take a look at what's going on here, and there's South Carolina, in 2017, we had over 400 hate crimes. Okay. Is that the worst in the nation? No, thank goodness. Is it the best in the nation? No, not by a long shot. Right. So what that means is at one time or another, we can all expect in our communities to be targeted. It's just going to happen. And then the question is, what do you do with it? How do you report it? And the rest. The fact of the matter is, we can do a lot better than what's been going on here. There are political reasons. Again, we're not going to go into them. There are religious reasons in some cases, which have also taken on political overtones, which we're also not going to go into, for why this is the case that it is. Raging against, the tide isn't really helpful, at least in my mind. Taking a look at what you have and how you move forward from that as a group, supporting each other, recognizing it's not just the Jews and it's not just Muslims, it's not just Sikhs, and it's not just Christians, it's not just Hindus, and it's not, pick your group. It's all of us. Doesn't matter where it starts. One of the realities of modern life is when you're dealing with hate crimes, you're dealing with equal opportunity haters, and they will move from one to another as they see the opportunity and as they see a soft underbelly that they can exploit. And that's the reality. Everybody is safe or nobody is safe. We all work together. Well, as Ben Franklin said, either we hang together or we hang separately, although that's a little dark perhaps. But we can do better. We can do better than the current situation. It doesn't have to be political. And one of the ways we do that is by a partnership in terms of data collection, which the IPSC has decided to do with the Secure Community Network. The Secure Community Network has been in South Carolina now for over 4 years. I was one of the people as part of a team. It's never a single person, it's always teams that helped to hire our regional director, a man by the name of Jason Roebuck. Jason has a tremendous background, military and law enforcement. He was a top cop in a town in New Jersey, working himself up from a patrolman right through to the chief of police, and then the head of public safety. And he now lives down close to Charleston, and he's our guy. And he is a tremendous resource. And he is a tremendous resource, not simply to the Jewish community, which is where it started, but also to all communities. He has worked with any number of churches and other groups who have asked, found out that he existed, called them up and said, how do we do this? How do we do a risk assessment? How do we do an emergency operation plan? How do we do this? How do we report? And he invariably responds because that's part of his job. Now, again, I'm not going to read the slide to you, but note something here. It's a nonprofit. Yes, it started dealing after the situation in Pittsburgh with the attack on the Tree of Life congregation there and the deaths. But it's national and it is open. So the team that they've put together in the Fusion Intelligence Center that they have in Chicago is second to none. The people who staff this organization, the majority of them are not Jewish. That's not what we were looking for. We were looking for the best professionals to make sure that all of us, and by all, I mean all of us, not simply Jews, all of us were safe. So people from the FBI, people from all these different agencies, name the agency, there's probably somebody working there. Some of the best intelligence operatives out there gaining intelligence. In point of fact, the federal agencies rely on some of the data coming from this fusion center to thwart attacks against religious organizations, assassination attempts, bombing attempts, kidnapping attempts, the whole 9 yards. That's what you can draw upon. Okay. And I want to rephrase, make sure we're all very, very clear again. This is not political. This is safety and security. We all need to be safe. We all need to be secure, and we all need to be free as promised by our Constitution and our Bill of Rights in our homes, in our places of worship as we see fit. Okay. And that's what it's about. Now, where's the IPSC fall in this? Well, this is from the website. And there it is at the top, just in case you don't know where it is. But there's a report hate incident, and that is a direct link to the SCN report page. Okay. And unlike law enforcement, where you're talking about a crime, and then the crime has to be defined as a hate crime. What we're doing here, or what you're seeing here with this group, is this. This goes back to a sense to broken windows. If there's something going on, report it. So it was an in-person assault or a threat, suspicious person or activity. If someone's driving around your place of worship 6 times and you can count the car and you know what the hubs on the tires are, it's suspicious. Report it. Something's not good, right? If there's a person coming and taking pictures of things that they wouldn't normally be taking pictures, now people take selfies all the time, right? But if they're taking pictures of your doors, if they're taking pictures of your windows, if they're taking pictures of your bushes and your foliage where people can hide, if they're taking pictures of your clergy as they come and they go and making notepad statements, I mean, that's a bit extreme, but you know what I'm saying? See it, say it, report it. Is that a crime in terms of what would normally go to law enforcement? Depends. If it's stalking, yes, but more often than not, no. But it's a pattern of behavior that SCN will track. And they will make that available to the groups who are involved with them so they know, hey, this guy's showing up at these various places, or this person is in a pickup truck. You should be concerned. Or at the very least, if they show up, report it so we can keep track and see what's going on, right? Property damage or vandalism is the most common thing you see. We've had that here in town with any number of places of worship of all groups. Suspicious phone calls or texts, quite a few of those, including bomb threats. You may remember all the bomb threats we were all getting. We got suspicious packages and letters. In fact, I got pretty good at knowing the bomb people here, the bomb squad. We had them run through our building at one point because we had stuff going on. So this all becomes important. And you can do this. And it can be anonymous. You are not required necessarily to put your name and the rest on it, or at least hold it as such. But it can be done. And again, it's not simply about the Jewish community. Yes, it started in our community. Yes, we have serious concerns, and we should. And so should you. And this is one of those things that's out there that you can use as a resource. And the IPSC, through Holly and everybody else on the board, has stuck it very nicely right there on the website, so you don't have to try to find it. You just go to where you normally go for the IPSC and you're good. All right. So what's it all mean? I feel like Star Trek here at the moment, but never mind. If we work together, right, understanding that our safety and security is interlaced with every other faith community here, our future will be both safer and brighter. We don't have to agree on everything. We won't. We don't have to, agree on how we worship. We won't. We have to agree is we are allowed to worship and believe the things that we believe because it's guaranteed by our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, and that we support each other in that freedom of belief because we're all Americans and that's what Americans do. Okay. So that was pretty much my spiel. That's everything I really wanted to say. And then I had a thing for questions. So if you have any questions, now would be a time to ask questions.
Jonathan, would you go back to the first slide and point out that last bullet so that people know this is IPSC obviously is about religions, but this is about a number of federally protected classes.
Let me see if I can get to it. I seem to be moving slowly here. All right, hang in there. This one?
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Okay. And understand that that list that's there is already the list that the FBI uses. The difference is that the FBI and other law enforcement will be looking for specific crimes that are attached to that versus the extended list that the SCN uses, which may or may not rise to the level of being a criminal act, but an act of concern. The trick is
So
to make
just
sure.
anyone is viewing this video but is visually impaired, this is for anyone who might be a victim because of race, color, religion, sex, gender, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical or mental disability.
Right. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm hearing silence.
We go from here.
Dottie, you got a question?
I guess what we're all thinking is, all right, where do we go from here? What do we do? How do we approach it?
Well, there are a couple things. One is if you are a member of a faith organization, which I think the majority of people currently on are, but this is going to be recorded, is that you sit down with with your board or your elders or the people who would be nominally in charge, of your organization, your clergy, however that's defined, and basically form a committee that keeps track of these things. People who have a lookout. In other words, you have greeters, many people, not all, but you may have a situation with greeters. The greeters are the people who know who comes. The greeters are the people who know who's new. The greeters are the people who see the people walking in front of the place. In other words, situational awareness and forming a group that's dedicated to keeping track. That's always a good place to start. There are resources online, and we'll make them available at a later date on the IPSC website as a add-on for making emergency operation plans or continuity plans. We just had a huge thunderstorm. My lights went out for 3 hours. We've had floods. Things happen. How do you continue beyond that? All these things become of importance. But when it comes to hate crimes, specifically, what you're talking about is forming a group that keeps track of phone calls. DHS, FBI, SCN, local law enforcement all have cheat sheets you can keep next to your phone if somebody calls in, how to get the basic information you can pass on. If something comes in the mail that you don't know about, call 911. There's a reason why we have these things out there. So again, forming groups, getting trained, and again, there will be training episodes. We've just had a couple in town that were open. Situational awareness, stop the bleed, countering active threat, which is the one most people know of as, run, hide, fight based on shooters. All these things are available and they are open to the public. They are produced by the FBI, they're produced by the Marshal Service, they are produced by SCN and by the local communities. All these things are available. Become involved, get on the mailing list, not hard to find. Again, we'll put this up as resources, and then we can move from there. Okay. I see that Sarah has her hand up. Go ahead, Sarah. What's up?
Yeah, so I am zeroing in on the task IPSC can help build the data by spreading the word about an easy way to report. And while you were talking, I looked at the website. I'm looking at it now on my phone, Secure Community Network,
Yep.
building a security shield over the North American Jewish community to ensure our safety, security, and resiliency. That's wonderful. Wonderful. There's a nonprofit. And at the same time, I'm wondering how can we get folks to be aware that there's a way to easy way to report any kind of hate threats out there via this website. If it says it's specifying the American Jewish community, even though
Well,
I know you said yeah,
that's where it started, and it's
yeah,
still concerned about the Jewish community. That's why it's called the Secure Community Network of the Jewish Federation. But the
yeah,
reality is, and they are very clear, that it's not simply about Jews because we are
yes,
members of the larger community. So again, yeah, so that goes unfortunately to some of the politics I was going to try to stay very far away from and tend to still.
Yeah.
But the reality is that there are no organization out there that are concerned about faith-based violence that are
Yeah.
going to be absolutely pristine clean in terms of their verbiage. So in this
Yeah.
case, because of the original attack on the Tree of Life congregation in Pittsburgh,
Hmm.
this organization took off. So they are clear about their roots. But the reality is that in terms of the recording of the information, that is open to everyone and does not require you to be Jewish. So we simply have to get.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to simply say that, we have to get the word out. If this were the Quakers and they had a statement about the history of the Quakers at the beginning, there are people who probably would not do it because they may have an issue with Quakers. If it was a mosque, potentially the same thing. The point of the IPSC is that we are strong our individual faiths and part of a larger community which embraces the other and the individual and how other organizations and religious institutions work, and we support each other moving forward. So I am not in charge of the verbs that are used by the Secure Community Network, but I have had talks with them where they are very clear that they would like to make sure that everybody is hooked in. The more groups that have eyes on keeping track of all our safety and security, the likelihood of any of us being blindsided goes way down. And that's simply a fact. When the mosque was attacked in the Northeast with vandalism, with things on their wall, we wanted to know it immediately. Because a person will attack a mosque, will attack a synagogue, and they will attack a church. Right.
Sure.
So that's what we're trying to do.
Can I comment, Jonathan? And Sarah, we talked about this extensively, me and some other people too. And the thing is, there is not anything else like this out there.
Yeah, I hear
It's
that.
it's
Uh-huh.
pretty sophisticated,
Yeah.
and it's not just about religion, and it's not John, I wanted to say anybody can go on here. You don't have to be part of a committee or even a congregation. If
No,
you
of course not.
if you experience some sort of racial incident, of course, if this is a clear crime, people need to stop and call the police, call 911 if it's
It's
an
always
emergency.
911.
But if it's something that people just would like to know what's going on out there, is there a wave of these odd things that are happening, then we can begin to predict what our safety needs are. But anyway, I appreciate your concern, and this was something that I explored with several people.
Well, can I ask one more question then? Actually, of you
Please.
too, Holly.
Sure.
Is it possible then that there could be maybe on the IPSC website a page or an infographic or something, and even infographics that could be shared on social media that say, hey, here's a place that you can report. This is the only thing that we know that's out there
Mhm.
as a reporting device. Something to explain that it's not just about reporting about threats to the Jewish community, which of course is very important in itself, but
Mhm.
make it really clear to people, because to get the word out there among the general population instead of just our little IPSC network,
Mhm.
it just seems like it would be good if it could be could it be put on the IPSC webpage or some other webpage as a link then to this website with
It
people
is.
knowing
It
they can.
is.
Uh-huh.
It's on our website. If
Is
you
it?
go to interfaithpartnersofsc.org,
Okay.
it's right there. And
Uh-huh.
it doesn't even mention SCN. You don't see that until you click to report an incident.
And then it goes
Yeah.
directly to the report page, not the first page. Yeah.
Great. Well, if they
Oh,
could ever change the wording on the actual Secure Community Network, that would be awesome.
I I
Yeah.
I
I
am not
have a question. I have a question.
sure.
when SCN gets reports of hate crimes or these things, do they interface with law enforcement too?
Yes,
They do. Okay.
yes,
So they
very
know
quickly.
that something could be happening.
SCN, because the people who are staff tend to be
Mm.
either former, I mean, retired or former law enforcement who were basically moved over to us or to them, to SCN, I should say. They're all still hardware. So
Right.
they actually have seats at the table for the fusion centers. They have a seat at the table for many years.
What's a fusion center, John?
Fusion Center is a center which came into existence after 9/11, after the Twin Towers and everything, based on the siloing, people having information, but they weren't sharing it. So a fusion center gets representatives from all the different organizations, and they fuse together and share intelligence and actionable information. So SCN has probably one of the finest fusion centers out there. It's really very impressive. And they are hardwired in to FBI, DHS, and the rest, and have been for years. So
Okay.
this is all a good thing. So no, they are very much tied in with law enforcement. With Jason, he's to and has spent time with practically every law enforcement organization in the state. He came, part of the thing when we hired him, brought him in here, was that he immediately turned around and sent out, statements to everybody saying, "I'd like to come visit." And he does, and he shares information. So, he knows Sheriff Lott and the folks over there. He knows the people in Lexington. He knows the people in Casey. He knows the people in Charleston, and Somerville, and Greenville, and Charlotte, and Florence, and North Augusta, and Aiken, Barnwell. He knows them. He's visited them. He is a face and a contact. So that's the good news. So if something happens someplace, the rest of us actually hear about it very quickly. We are all on emergency contact sets. So if something happens, we find out about it within minutes. Be aware this happened at XYZ. Be aware this may be coming through your area. So no, it's real time and it's actionable. But also of equal importance is it's not simply about crimes. It's about temperature in the community. It's about, people behaving badly to other members of the community within their religious organizations. So if somebody comes and spray paints again a mosque like they did, that's vandalism, but it's also harassment and a few other things. If they're standing in front of the area with placards, calling out the religion as they have in rather nasty and gross terms, that may or may not be actual because it's freedom of speech, but it's reportable and it's trackable. So, for instance, our case with the Goyim Defense League holds their banners over the freeways, or throws the white rice, their symbolism for you, and their flyers onto people's lawns. Is it simple littering? I mean, that's the crime. They engage in littering, right? And then you go beyond that. No, it's actually an attempt at intimidation. Does it rise to criminal intimidation? Depends which state you're in. Depends what the laws and location are like. But it gets reported. So these things, like the phone calls for bombs and the rest that happen, they tracked them state by state by state. Basically, gave you an idea of which state was going to be hit next, and they were right because they're tracking it. So that was the good news. I'm sorry, Holly.
So my understanding is that if somebody reports here, I've got about three things here. It can be anonymous, right? It is
Yes.
anonymous.
Yes,
Is that right?
it can be anonymous. Yes.
Okay. And then what, is there any way that SCN can backtrack to identify who has put something in if they want to be anonymous? like an IP
Wow.
address or something.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Is there a way for SCN to somehow identify who has submitted a report who wants to be anonymous?
Well, I would suspect that given, Palantir and a zillion other things that are out there for people to use, that truly being anonymous is a thing of the past. But the reality is, if you ask to be anonymous, they're not going to check on you.
Okay. And then the next thing is the IPSC website likely to get bombed with multiple hits on that link?
Well, I don't know. South Carolina, fortunately, thank goodness, tends to be relatively quiet, comparatively speaking. Things could change. If you and all your link is doing is leading them to the other page, which is designed to take a heavy load. So
Okay.
it's not like when you hit that link that you're still attached to that link.
Yeah.
That link moves you from our page to the report page. And then you're on the report page. You're not on the link page. So let me put it differently. If we have, God forbid, if we have 1,000 people hit that link because something happens in the Low Country or some other place, and let's hope it never does, it's not going to close that. It's not going to deny service to your page. All those people are going to be sent to the SCN page. Now, mind you, if there's a person with a knife, a gun, a bat, something like that, call 911.
Yeah.
Those people, the 911 centers are designed to take massive loads. They don't want a person calling in, they want 30 people calling in with the information. Right. So that's I understand the concern, but I don't think it's a concern.
Okay. Just trying to anticipate any questions that might.
Okay.
Does anybody else have questions for Jonathan? Any last thoughts that you want to leave us with, John?
I'm glad that you came tonight. I'm glad there are people who are sufficiently concerned to show up. Hopefully, it's not simply, some version of entertainment. I don't think my cartoon that I used was all that good. The animated GIFs certainly weren't. But this is the kind of thing that all of us should be concerned about. I've been concerned about it for decades, and involved with making sure that the communities that I'm part of are safe. Because all of us, when we get to the bottom of it, simply want to live our life to the fullest point that we can within our faith communities, with as few encumbrances as possible, and as the greatest amount of freedom as possible. And that is the promise of the United States. So to me, anything that we can do to support that in our apolitical format here with IPSC, so much the better. And I encourage you to do that, if you so desire, recognizing the SCN page and resource is just that. It's a page and a resource. There's no arm twisting. It's available. If you wish to use it, use it. If you think you can, some better way to go for it. But it's there, and it's already paid for, and it's available.
Thank you. I see a question that we missed earlier.
Oh, okay.
I've heard South Carolina legislators, and I was there, I heard this too, say we don't need hate crime laws. Everyone
Yeah,
is treated the
yeah,
same for crimes. What's your comment on that?
that's not true. I mean, I understand why they're saying it's not necessary, because let's be clear. Again, no politics involved with this. It's simply straight fact. The law that was brought forward to make a hate crime act here in South Carolina was a post conviction act. So the crime you get, if you're convicted of it during the run up to sentencing, you have mitigating and other factors that have to be taken account. before they provide a sentence, custodial or otherwise. And the law that was put together specifically to make sure that people, only going through it, had indeed been convicted of a crime, then faced the question of, was it a hate crime? For instance, if someone comes up to me, beats me on the head, and takes my wallet, well, first off, they're going to be really disappointed because there's nothing in my wallet but moths, right? But if they're coming up simply because they want to put food on their table, there's a huge difference between that, not to the back of my head, mind you, but big difference to that than that someone saying, "Oh, that guy's got a yarmulke or a kippah on his head. He must be Jewish. I'm going to go across the street and kick them out of him and take his wallet." There's a difference. It's the same crime in a sense that I'm still on the ground bleeding and I've been robbed, right? But the reason for it is a factor. One is straight robbery, and the other one is hate animus and robbery. And to me, when you get hate animus based on all those wonderful things we have here at the bottom of this page, that should be a factor in lengthening or otherwise determining what's going on with a person in terms of justice. So for those people who say, well, the crime is a crime is a crime, you don't need the rest of it, to them, you don't need the rest of it. For some of us, myself included, say, yeah, it's a crime, but there are different reasons for that crime. Then it's a different thing. I had one legislator ask, tell me, well, having this thing isn't going to stop people from hating or anything else. I said, no, it won't. But it may make them rethink doing it. He said, do you think that will work? And I said, well, I don't know. We have murder, laws, about murder and homicide. Have we stopped all the murders and homicides? And he said, well, no, actually, we're pretty high up there in terms of the numbers. I said, great. So since it doesn't work, should we just get rid of the law? And he said, I said, right. People who really want to do something bad, who truly, truly, truly want to do something bad, you're not necessarily going to dissuade them from doing something bad. Just not. On the other hand, for those individuals who are waffling, it may make a factor. For those of us who are seeking justice, it may make a factor in terms of closure to the family, right? So all these things get into play, and that's why we have a legislature. They get to debate all these things, hopefully from understanding and knowledge and experience, and not simply from political party. Again, we're not talking politics tonight. And they come up with something that's doable. So as far as I'm concerned, again, circling back around, yeah, the answer to that is a straight no. No, it's not sufficient, and it is necessary, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we've had people decide to come to South Carolina because we don't have a hate law.
Oh,
Literally, the Klan in Stormwatch is one of the big alt-right, specifically hate or publications on the front page. Had an open ed that basically invited people to move to South Carolina because we do not have a hate crimes thing. And apparently some have because they talked about it. What's that mean in the long run? Don't know. I guess we'll find out.
well, we're talking about things that make people afraid, and that's pretty much the definition of terrorism, when you cause people to be afraid enough that it changes their behavior. So if we can identify those things, then we can talk about strategies to work against them, right?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
For those
And
of
one
you,
thing, there's one more point.
Mhm.
There's terrorism, which is the theater of politics where you are engaging in a drama, in a sense, to influence other people, which is what you're talking about. But
Mhm.
there's also this thing called stochastic terrorism, where you are engaging in verbiage and words which do not necessarily in and of themselves rise to the level of a terroristic act, but are sufficient to fan the flames in other people to do the act for you. The
Mhm.
classic is a Beckett. Who will rid me of this priest?
Mhm. Yell and fire in a crowded theater.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, thank you. For those of you with your chat box open, the link to our website is there. It's Interfaith Partners of SC, Interfaith Partners of SC.org. No dashes or dots or anything. And last call for questions. And I want to add my thanks to Jonathan's for everybody who attended and who was willing to let us record this so that we can share it with others. We hope to see you soon at an interfaith event.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Leader. This was
Yeah.
very enlightening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Very
dear.
Yep.
Thank you for
Okay.
coming.
See you soon.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.